So out of these conquistadors, one conquered and invaded the Aztecs. And
Hernan. Hernan Cortez.
Hernan Cortez. Thank you very much. And if you remember, the main factors that helped the Spanish to easily conquer and to invade the Aztecs,
Equipment.
heavy armors and metal weapons, plus in addition to the usage of horses. So the natives had no idea about these animals. They thought they were aliens and they were afraid at the very beginning. So beasts of burden from Europe to the Newfoundland land or from the Newfoundland land to Europe? Is it a hard question? What's wrong with you today? Sleepy. We're in the middle of the day. Guys. Do you
From
have
Europe
any
to the
do you
land.
have any quizzes today?
No.
Mazen Hisham. Mazen.
Yes.
Do you think the beasts of burden came from Europe to the Newfoundland land or from the Newfoundland land to Europe?
Newfoundland Europe.
The Newfoundland land to Europe.
Yes.
Hernan Cortez, while invading and conquering the Aztec civilization, the Aztec country, he was using horses or not?
No.
He didn't use it. Badr, what do you think?
The question of from the land to Europe or what?
Beasts of burden.
What?
The beasts of burden came from Europe to the Newfoundland land or from the Newfoundland land to Europe?
بس اسمه beast of burden أصلا.
Sorry, speak up.
What's mean of the beasts of burden?
Beasts of burden. Beasts of burden are some kind of animals that we can use for cargo, for transporting cargo, and we can use them as one of the means of transportation, like donkeys, mules, and even horses. Okay? So the beasts of burden from the Newfoundland land to Europe or from Europe to the Newfoundland land?
From Europe to Newfoundland land.
From Europe to the Newfoundland land. Thank you. Yes, like Hernan Cortez, guys. He was simply using horses. And it was their first time for the natives to see such an animal. So they have no idea about the beasts of burden. Horses, donkeys, mules, and so on. So, what do they used to use for carrying cargoes, for example? Here, in order to make it easier for you, there is a specific animal, a certain animal available here in the Newfoundland land, and you cannot see it in any other place in the world. Like kangaroos. Kangaroos are available over there in only Australia, right? There is a certain animal here in the Newfoundland land. They used to use it as an alternative for the beasts of burden. And this animal starts with an L. So this animal can be, use your mind here.
Lamb.
Lamb.
Yes, miss.
Llama.
Llama. Thank you very much. They used to use llamas as an alternative, guys, for the beasts of burden, because they have no idea about these animals before the colonization of their land. Okay? So let's Continue. So the tomatoes from Europe to the Newfoundland land. Beasts of burden from Europe to the Newfoundland land. What about the cocoa beans? The cocoa beans, guys. As you know, the cocoa beans is the main ingredient, the main component for chocolate. But at the very beginning, they didn't eat it. They have no idea about chocolate, by the way. At the very beginning, they used to only drink it as a hot beverage. So the cocoa beans from the new discovered land to Europe, or from Europe to the new discovered land? What do you think? Take a wild guess. Can we produce coffee from the cocoa beans? Is cocoa beans the same like the coffee beans? Both of them are the same?
No,
Or what?
No,
I think they're different.
Yes.
You think they're different? Do you like coffee, guys? If you are a coffee lover, raise your hand, please. No one? If you are a coffee lover, if you like coffee, raise your hand. Raise your hand. So we can say almost. Okay, hands down, please. So the question, cocoa beans is the same like the coffee beans? No. Cocoa beans, we can have some kind of nowadays hot chocolate. So the hot chocolate is out of the cocoa beans, while the coffee, our regular coffee, is out of the coffee beans, right? So our traditional question, the cocoa beans from the new discovered land to Europe, or from Europe to the new discovered land? Take a wild guess. There is no correct or wrong answers.
من برا ليوروب. صح؟
From
the founder land to Europe.
From the new discovered land to Europe. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. The story, guys, when Christopher Columbus landed and discovered the Caribbean islands, he noticed these beans and he brought some of them to Europe. But at the very beginning, the Europeans didn't like it because it was better a little bit. There is no sweetness in this beverage. They used to only boil the beans and drink it as a hot beverage without adding sugar, cream, or even milk to it. So it was a bitter beverage, didn't like it. Plus, in addition, the look of the bean itself, it was unimpressive to them. It looks like it's some kind of animal's waste. They didn't like it at the very beginning. But when Hernan Cortez conquered and invaded the Aztecs, he noticed that the Aztecs were using it as some kind of currency, as an alternative for money. So it grabbed his attention, and he took some of these beans with him over there to Spain. But again, the Europeans didn't like it until some cooks, some chefs over there in the Spanish court started to add a little bit of milk or cream to this beverage in order to sweeten it a little bit. And it was an instant hit that swept all of Europe at that time. It was very popular. At that time, we are talking about the 1500s, guys. But use your mind a little bit. It was discovered here, and they have to transport it over there. So the beverage was expensive or cheap? What do you think? It was a cheap beverage? or an expensive one?
Expensive?
Of course, logically, yes, Muhammad Yusuf, do you want to say something?
I have a question, like it's out of context. It was like about the coffee thing. Is like South America like the biggest suppliers of coffee in the world?
Exactly, Yusuf. In fact, it's an important issue here.
Why is it an issue?
The main producer of coffee all over the world is, who's gonna complete this sentence, guys?
Brazil?
Brazil, exactly. Try to imagine that Brazil in the 1500s had no idea about coffee. They simply were introduced to this coffee after the colonization, because simply the Europeans grabbed and took the coffee beans with them, and they tried to plant it over there in Brazil. Nowadays, Brazil is the world's largest coffee producer. Got the issue? So before this contact, all of the natives in the new discovered land or in the Americas had no idea about the coffee, by the way, before this colonization. Let me tell you something. Do you know one of the strange facts about coffee? That the most expensive brand of coffee, it's called Luwak. Luwak coffee. And it's produced only in Indonesia, over there in Southeast Asia. And in fact, it's not only a plant.
Animal.
An animal, exactly. I used to think that they used to have the plants for the coffee. They will simply take the seeds, roast it, and that's it. But in fact, the issue is different. Over there in Indonesia, they have this coffee tree. They will simply take the seeds or the beans, and they will start to feed them to this animal. It's called civet. The civet looks like a possum, if you know this animal. But the beans or the seeds of the coffee cannot be digested in this animal's digestion system, the digestive system. So it will simply, the seed as a whole will go to his wastes. They will clean the wastes, roast the seeds, and that's it. This is the Luwak coffee, the most expensive one all over the world, by the way. 1 pound of this coffee will be worth $300. The pound, by the way, equals how many kilograms? Do you have any idea? The pound, 1 pound equals
like 0.45.
0.45 exactly. Okay, so 0.4 will be worth of $300. But nowadays, if you go to any local store, if you want to buy some coffee beans, you can buy a kilo for 80 or almost 75 Saudi riyals. Try to imagine the difference. Okay, so the cocoa beans, our subject here in the lesson, the cocoa beans were transferred from the Newfoundland land to Europe. Beasts of burden from Europe to the Newfoundland land. Tomatoes from the Newfoundland land to Europe, or from Europe to the Newfoundland land. Who can correct me here if I had made a mistake? Or
Cocoa beans from the Newfoundland land to Europe.
Exactly. Beasts of burden
from Europe to the Newfoundland land.
And if I ask Faris Ayman, tomatoes. Tomatoes.
عارف مصر يس.
Tomatoes from the Newfoundland to Europe or vice versa?
لا from Europe to Newfoundland.
From Europe to the Newfoundland land. Okay, Faris. Hani, do you agree? Hani,
Sorry,
do
what?
you agree? Do you agree for tomatoes?
What about the tomatoes are what?
Tomatoes originally came from Europe to the Newfoundland land or from the Newfoundland land to Europe?
Newfoundland to Europe.
The Newfoundland land to Europe, exactly, Hani. This exchange of goods, guys, is called the Columbian exchange. The Columbian exchange. Some items are available in the Newfoundland land or the Americas, while the others are only available over there in Europe. There was some kind of separateness between these two kinds, and here I mean plants and also animals.
مستر طب الإجابة الصح اللي هي كانت from New World to Europe ولا؟
Tomatoes
اه
from the Newfoundland land to Europe.
وأنا مستر أنت عايز تقول لنا إيطالي مش إيطالي بس إنها يعني تطلع في إيطالي
Yes,
كده.
yes, I have already said, try to imagine the Italian cuisine without tomatoes.
That's okay. But it came
Right?
from New World, not
It came from the New World. The same issue like your friend Yusuf had mentioned something, right? And your friend Yusuf had mentioned something. He said that Brazil is the largest coffee producer all over the world, right? Nowadays, it's a fact. Muhammad Yusuf had said that. Right, guys? Muhammad had said that, right? That the #1 coffee producer in the world is Brazil.
Brazil.
Exactly. But in fact, the coffee came originally from Europe to the Newfoundland land. So without this contact, there is no Brazilian coffee, right? How many kinds of coffee do we have, or do we know? The main ones.
Like, what do you mean? Like,
Do
dark
you
roast
know
or like
dark roast and medium? This is for roasting, okay?
oh
But the bean itself, it has 3 main kinds: Arabica, Robusta,
oh
and Liberica. Okay, at the back of any coffee packet, or if you're gonna buy any brand of coffee, you're gonna see at the back side of the box the main type, this type of the coffee bean: Arabica, Robusta, or Liberica. What's familiar in our region, what's common here, is Arabica. Okay.
Arabica is made in the Middle East or in the Arab world, right?
In fact, the name Arabica has a story. It was said that the first people who used to drink coffee here in the Middle East were the Arabs, especially in Yemen. But this story is not true, because originally the coffee beans came from Ethiopia, from Africa, an African country, Ethiopia, because there was some kind of trading between the Arabs and the Africans. If you remember, when the first Portuguese sailor who went to discover the route around Africa to India, he got some help from an Arabian sailor. His name was Ahmad bin Magid, right? Because simply the Arabs were involved in this business before the Portuguese. So there was some kind of trading between Ethiopia and Yemen, crossing the Red Sea. So they brought some seeds from Ethiopia and started to plant them over there in Yemen, where got its name, Arabica. But it's not our issue here. It's only for your personal knowledge. Okay? So
Okay.
guys, the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange, simply the voyages launched large-scale contact between the old world and the new. They used to call this newfounded land the New World, and they used this term for almost 2 centuries. The New World and the old one, the familiar one, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. So the contact between these two groups led to the widespread exchange of animals, plants, and even diseases. But I want to ask you a question. Why do you think there was a variety in the plants and even the animals between the old world and the new one?
Because in the old, their
The climate.
the first was the first, so they didn't do. There was too many, and there was less people. But now we are too many and less element.
So what do you want to say, that we have more humans than animals, or I didn't figure it right? Would you please repeat it?
Yes, like yes, it's the same. Like the same.
Some one of you had said something about climate, because there is a difference in the climate.
Yes, Mr. Me. Safe.
Okay. Or safe because of the physical isolation between the two worlds. There is no contact because of the physical isolation. And as I told you about the story of coffee beans, they used to transfer it from one continent to another, from Africa to Asia by crossing the Red Sea, right? But because of the physical isolation between the Western and the Eastern hemispheres, there was a variety between the plants and even the animals. Let's have a closer look. From the New World, from the Americas to Europe, they brought potatoes, peanuts, corn, beans, peppers, carrots, tomatoes, pineapples, tobacco, papayas, strawberries, avocados, pumpkins, turkeys. All of these items were not available to Europe at that time. On the other hand, from Europe to the newfounded land, they brought with them olives, oranges, honeybees, bananas, turnips, wheat, lemons, pears, tea, and also coffee, chicken, sheep, cows, horses, and donkeys. Got the idea? This is called the Columbian Exchange. The contact between the two groups led to the widespread exchange of animals, plants, and diseases. Sorry, do you have any question?
No, Mr.
I have to remind you guys, by Tuesday, we're going to have our quiz. It will be published at 9 p.m. And Tuesday's lesson will be a revision before getting your quiz. Is it clear?